Hello and welcome to Upstack America's Oracle ABS Financials Functional Training. My name is Bob and I'm the lead senior consultant for Upstack America. And today I have Victor, who is also a senior consultant, and we are covering General Ledger Lesson 17. And Victor, can you please walk us through?
Thank you for the introduction and welcome everyone to the 17th lesson in this Oracle EBS Financials Functional Training series. Today we are going to continue looking at the concept of mass allocation, which we started in our previous lesson. Okay, so in the previous lesson we looked at what mass allocation is and what we use it for, and we said that we use it to redistribute revenues or costs from a central pool and redistribute it to different entities, which can be departments, cost centers, or any other entities that we want to do this reallocation among or between. So we also said that mass allocation is not a mandatory setup step to implement general ledger. Rather, it is a feature that you can offer to the client to save time if your client does this kind of allocation entries often. So they can use the mass allocation feature to reduce their workload in data entry and all that. So today we are going to continue from there, and first I want us to look at the structure of the mass allocation formula. I believe we took a peek at this yesterday also, but just to continue from here. So this is what the structure of the mass allocation formula looks like. We have a batch that contains one or more formulae, and each of these formula produces a journal. Okay, so once we generate, we use a generate option, the formula that we define produces a journal. And let me show you what this looks like in Oracle. Let me log in quickly. So I'm going to switch responsibilities and go to my Mascani. So let's go to journals, define allocation. So this is the first level of the hierarchy, which is a small, simple window where we just put in the name of the batch. We describe the balance type and we put in a description. Then when we select this formulas button is where when we get this more complicated window, and this window is where we enter the formula, the mass allocation formula. Okay, so I just wanted to show you so that you can be familiar with it. So those are the two levels of the hierarchy that you've seen. Now, the mass allocation formula that we are talking about, this is what it looks like. This is what the format of that formula is. And I believe we also mentioned this a bit yesterday. And we said that using our example where we are reallocating the cost of meals among various departments, how would we do it? We said we would take the total cost of the meal, supposing it was 900, which is what we were using in our example, and then we would divide it by the total number of employees in all the departments. So sales and marketing, finance, human resources, add all the employees that work in those departments, divide that total cost by the total number of employees to get the cost per employee. Then to find the cost for each department, which is what we want to do, we multiply by the number of employees in each department. So that is the same way that the mass allocation formula is defined. And however, all those amounts that we have used there, they have their technical names. So the total cost or the total amount that is being reallocated is called the cost pool. This is regardless of whether this amount is a revenue or an expense. We just call it the cost pool. Total usage, in our case, would be the total number of employees. Okay, but it can, depending on what you're doing allocation for, it can be anything else, which is non-financial information. So it can be the total number maybe of land under development, or it can be the total number of house units. So total number of products, stuff like that, depending on what you are allocating your cost or revenues among. And then usage factor is the basis, is what now defines the amount that will go to each entity. Okay, so in our case, it would be the number of employees in each department. Okay, or so if you're dividing this among maybe projects, you can say maybe the total number of projects in a certain city or something like that. But the usage factor is what usually determines how much will go to each entity that you are reallocating your cost pool among. So that is the basic format of the mass allocation formula. We are also going to see there are other features such as the target and the offset, and I think the best way to look at those features is now by seeing how they are on the formula window that I've just shown you. So we're going to look at each of these features and see where they fall on the formula window and how we enter them. So let's start with the mass allocation cost pool. We've already said the cost pool is the total amount that is being redistributed or reallocated. And this cost pool, when we are defining it in the actual window on Oracle, we usually reference the account where that total amount is sitting. So what do I mean? In our example, we would have an account, an expense account where the total cost of the meals which were purchased by the company for its employees would have an account where that balance is sitting. Okay. So in the window where we define the formula, cost pool is usually entered in this first line here that is labeled A. Okay. So that is where you reference either the account where that amount is sitting, or you can directly enter the amount that you want to reallocate. That's why you see these two fields. You have one that says amount and another one that says account. So you can enter the amount. If it is 900, you enter this 900, or you can enter the account combination where that balance is sitting. All right. So that is what you reference in this first line that refers to the cost pool, line A. All right, let's move on. We have talked about the mass allocation usage factor, and we have said it is the criteria that we use to allocate the amount. So in our case, it would be the number of employees or the headcount in each department. All right. So for these amounts, how do we reference them? Remember, before we started this topic of mass allocation, we had talked about statistical information in Oracle. And we said we can create accounts where we can enter and store non-financial information or statistical information. And we went ahead to create accounts for headcount. We created accounts, I think, for land. We created accounts for house units. So when we want to tell Oracle that this is where the information about the usage factor is stored, then those are the accounts that we usually reference. Okay, so we will have an account that will show us the total number of employees for each department, and those are the ones that we reference in this second line here that refers to the usage factor, this line B. So that is where we enter those accounts. Now, perhaps what might be puzzling at this point is that we only have one line here, but in our case, we are reallocating these expenses, this cost for meals, for breakfast, among 3 departments. So we technically have 3 accounts that show the total number of the employees in each department. Okay. So Oracle has a feature. Okay, let me put it this way. What we use in order to refer to all those 3 accounts, one, we utilize parent values, which you already know about, and then we utilize a feature called looping that tells Oracle to refer to this line where we have used a parent account the number of times equal to the child values represented by that parent account. So that explanation might seem a bit complex at the moment, but right now just understand that we are looking at the window and where everything in the formula falls. So we are going to discuss further all the other features that allow us to reference multiple accounts in one line. But you can know that we utilize the feature of parent values, which you're already familiar with. Okay, so that is the second line, line B, and that is where we enter our mass allocation usage factor. The third line is where we enter the total usage, and we said the total usage is the combined number of individual usage factors. So in our case, it would be the total number of employees in all the departments. The total usage, we put it in this line C. All right. So you reference the account, which is also containing statistical information, because this is, we're talking about, in our case, headcount. You reference the account that contains that information. In this case, we are also going to use parent values because we have individual departments, correct? So we are going to put them all under one parent value, and then we are going to tell Oracle to sum the total number of employees in our case, or any other usage factors in that account. So line C refers to the total usage. Now, something that I wanted to mention a bit before we continue, you can see even when you look at these letters here that refer to the various lines, that the formula is entered here. So here you can say that it is the cost pool multiplied by the usage factor divided by the total usage. Okay, so that is the formula, that is the mass allocation formula. So you enter the the cost pool, which is then multiplied by the usage factor, then divided by the total usage, which is exactly what we said. It is this formula right here, which you already talked about. So maybe that also just helps to understand this screen a bit better if it's a bit complicated. Now, as you can see, there are other lines here, the line T and the line O, which are the target and the offset, which we're now going to talk about. So this is what we have done so far, right? We have entered the cost pool, or we've entered the account where that amount is sitting here. We have also indicated to Oracle what the individual usage factors are, which is 40, 30, and 20, which are the number of employees in each department. And we have also told Oracle what is the total usage, or where this amount sits, the account where this amount sits. So with this information, we can say that Oracle has generated these amounts, right? Because it is 900 divided by 90, which is 10, then times 40 times 30, and then times 20, which you get 400, 300, and 200. So we can say that Oracle has now generated these amounts. However, Oracle still needs to know where these amounts are now being redistributed to. And that is what we call the target accounts, correct? So what are the target accounts? From already when we were discussing the feature of mass allocation, we said that in our case here we are redistributing this meals expense from a central pool, maybe which refers to the main office, to the expense accounts for each department. So this combination refers to the expense account for department 10. This combination refers to an expense account, a meals expense account for department 20, and this one is for department 30. So we need to tell Oracle where each of these amounts which it has generated with the information that we have provided here, where they are going to be allocated, which is basically the whole point of this mass allocation. So in this T line here, we enter those target accounts. All right. Now again, this is just one line, but in our case, we are targeting 3 accounts because we have 3 departments. So just like we did with this usage factor line, we use the feature of parent values, where we use a parent value that represents all these 3 departments, and then we use a feature of looping, where we tell Oracle to go back to each of the child values and assign it its respective amount. And like I said, we are going to see that in action very soon. I'm just trying to give an explanation so that you have an idea of what is going on. So that is what this target line refers to, and that's where we enter these accounts to which these amounts are going to be attributed. The next line we have seen there is the line O, and this is the mass allocation offset line. We have already encountered this concept of an offset line when we were doing recurring journals. So the offset line is the same concept. It's the balancing entry, right? For every journal that is produced, we have to have the debits and the credits are equal, right? So it is the credit or the debit account that is used to balance the allocation lines that are produced by the allocation formula. So let's go back here. in our case here, we are debiting, we're increasing the expense, right, which is debiting for each of the departmental, let me call them that, yeah, the departmental accounts, meaning that they are the expense accounts for these departments where we want to do these allocations, right? So we are debiting those accounts from a central pool, which was the expense account which we called for the main office. Okay, so all these three lines are debit lines. Okay, but what also is happening is we are crediting that amount from that central pool. All right, so that all these total debits are equal to a total credit in amounts from that central pool. All right, so we do a debit for these three lines, which the total is 900, and we are crediting the central pool. So that credit line here is our offset line, because it's a equal and opposite, right? So it's a credit that is 900, which is equals to this total debits of 900. So this offset line, it can be the same as the cost pool account, which is going to be our case, because that account is the same one where the cost pool is sitting, right? That's the expense account for the main for the head office or the central account. But it doesn't have to be the case. You can use another account as designated by maybe the accountants of the company, maybe like a clearing account, which then can be cleared out using the main expense account. But the main point is that we have to have an offset line, which is the opposite and equal, which is a debit or credit for the debit or credit allocations which are generated by the formula. And again, you see where we enter it on the window. And in our case, we are going to use the same account as the cost pool. So now we have understood what this window, what every line on this window represents. And as you can see, it's not that complicated. So now we know how to enter the mass allocation formula. So once we enter this mass allocation formula, of course, there are other entries here that we are going to talk about as we are doing the actual entry in the system. But now, just ignoring this for a bit. Once we enter everything correctly here, and we generate, right? What is going to be generated? It's going to generate this one journal, all right? So this is the allocation journal, and these are going to be the journal lines in that journal, which goes back to this image. So we have defined a formula. So once we generate, we produce one allocation journal with those lines that we have defined there. Okay. So now there are a couple of things that we need to be sure are set before we can do mass allocation. We need to verify that in our case all the departments or the relevant segment in any other case are set. We also need to verify that all the accounts, the cost pool account and the start accounts that contain the balances for headcount, we need to ensure that all of them are set and that the balances are okay, so that we can produce the right amount. Once we do that, we can create our batch, define the formulas therein. Once we define the formulas, we can generate the allocation journals. We can do it one time, or we can schedule for them to be generated periodically, maybe at the end of every month or whatever the requirement of the client might be. Once those journals are generated, we have the option to review them and ensure that everything is correct and then post them. Okay, that is the basic cycle of the mass allocation process. Now, let's go to the system and take care of this step here. Verify that all the departments are there, and verify all the requisite accounts are in good shape. Just close that window. So I'm going to go to Setup, Financials, Flex Fields, Key, and go to Values. So this is the natural account segment, and these are the values in the value set. Okay, so we know we are going to need the cash account because that's what we are going to use to enter the original journal. All right, the original entry that shows an expense for meals that has been paid for at the main office level, the original journal entry, which we are then going to use to do the reallocation of amount. So anyway, that cash account is there. I also created an account for meals. Okay, so that's going to be the expense account where we are going to debit. As you can see here, we also have the headcount natural account that we created when we were doing start entries. So that's all set. Let's go to the departments. We actually have 4 departments. In our case, so that's what we're going to work with. It's fine. So all the departments are fine. What we are going to do, like I said, we need to put this in a parent value, all these departments, because we are going to use that feature of parent values when we are entering the line for the usage factors and the total usage and the target accounts. So So that's fine. So let's follow this procedure. We're going to enter this main journal. All right. And remember, we said this original journal entry, it can come from, it can also come from the payables module. But since we don't have a payables module right now, we are going to enter it as a standard journal in GL. So when I was working, when I was making the slides, I was working with 3 departments. But since we have 4 departments in our actual implementation, let's enter maybe an amount that's more favorable to 4 departments. But so let's go to Oracle. First, we are going to open a new period because we want to have a clean slate to work with, and we also want to ensure that this entry that we do is the only entry that's going to hit this particular expense account for this period, so that we reallocate the correct amounts. All right. Let's go to open close. Let's open the period of June, which is feature entry at the moment. Okay, so that request has been launched. Let's enter a new journal. The period has not yet been opened. Okay, so the new period has been opened. So we're going to do this for June, and we're going to do meals expense for mass allocation. Okay. So what do we want to do? We want to enter an entry for company 1 against this meals account that I created. Okay. You can use a default or any division, right? I'm going to use the default here too. So let's see. We can use 1200. Hope that works. And we are paying this in cash. So credit cash. So this is our original journal entry. Okay, and this 1200 is the amount that we are going to use, that we are going to reallocate among the different departments to see what each department costs for the meals expenses. So we can post this. Now something else we need to look at. Sorry. We need to enter headcount journals, all right, for each department. So we haven't done this yet. We haven't recorded yet the number of employees in each department, right? So we need to update that. And if we go here to inquiry count, and we do start with our headcount. So let's do that. Let's look at all the employees in all our departments. And you will see that this account doesn't even show up because we haven't entered any amounts. All right, so there are no balances so in this account. So we need to go and enter start journals to update the employees in each department. So we go here, enter journals, new journal. So we can say headcount for employees. I want to do this for June. Remember, this is statistical information, okay? So select start currency. Don't pay attention to that. That's DFF. Now, remember these journals, they don't have to respect the balancing of the debit credit accounting rules, and a debit is an increase and a credit is a decrease. Since we don't have any entries here yet, the amount we enter here is going to be the total number. After this, if we post these amounts now and then we come and do another journal here, those amounts are going to be incremental. They are going to add to what we have already entered in this journal at the moment. So let's go ahead and do those entries. We want to put this under head count, 8,000. Okay. I'm going to do default for this. So our first department is operations. Okay. All right. So we have the amount we are reallocating is 1,200. So let's do this in such a way that all our employees add up to 120. I think that will be good to work with. So let's say operations has 50 employees. Department 20, which is down here, HR and payroll. Okay, let's say it has 30 employees, right? Sales and marketing, let's say it has 20 employees. Then our final should be 40. The finance department, let's say this has also 20 employees. Okay. So once we post this, it's going to update those balances, and we're going to have headcounts for employees in each department. All right. Yes. Okay. So we have done this first part. We have entered the cost pool journal, or the original journal. We have also entered the head counts. Now we need to create parent values. Remember, I told you that we need to create to put our departments in parent values and a parent value, so that we can put that combination using the parent value in that one line for either is it for total usage or for usage factor, and then we can use the feature of looping to tell Oracle to go back to each of the child values under that parent value to either look for the usage factor, or to allocate the amounts for if it is in the target lines. So we need to create parent values for the segments against which you want the system to extract usage factor and total usage. And in our case, it's the parent values for the departments which have headcounts, and the parent value will be used in the B line, which is the usage factor, the C line, which is the total usage, and the T line, which is the target line. Okay. So before we go there, just let me show you a quick thing. Let's go to inquiry account. Let's look at the balances for the number of employees for the accounts that we just entered. So 10 through 40. What I'm doing. See, now they appear here because they have been added to the, we entered some data against them, and they've been added to the combinations table and all that. So for the first one, for department 10, operations, show balances. That's the balance. PTD and YTD are the same because those are the first entry. So now, supposing this is June, right? If we entered another journal, maybe for the next month, and updated the number of employees, the total number of employees, let's say we add 20, would be 70, okay? But the PTD for July would be 20. So we are going to see when we are entering the formula. On the formula window, we use the YTD because we want to divide this among the total number of employees present, not among among the incremental number of employees. So we use the YTD. So you can check the balances for all of them just to make sure, but you can see that the balances have been updated. So let's move from there and go and create parent values for the departments. So to do that, we have to go to setup, financials, keys, flex field, key values. I'm going to add this to, oh, it's already here. So under this department segment, we are going to create a parent value in which we are going to define all these departments as the child values, okay? So we can call this AL for allocations. Leave that the maximum number of characters you can have. Just call it allocations. Okay. You have to define this as a parent value. Okay. Then define child ranges. To save before we proceed. Define child ranges. So we don't want this default to be under this parent value. So we are going to go from 10 through 40. So 10 through 40. Okay. Let's save that. So now we have created the parent value and we can view the hierarchies here. Those are the child values under that parent value. Let's save and close. All right. So we have that. Now before we do mass allocation, there's one profile option that we need to specify, because if we don't specify a value there, we're going to get an error. And this profile option is MO operating unit that mostly has to do with sub ledgers, but it's just we have to specify a value there before doing mass allocation so that we don't get an error. Although it really has nothing to do with what we're doing right now, because it deals with subledger modules. So let's go switch responsibility, system admin. Put this in my list, top 10 list 2. Responsibility is Maskani. Profile option is MO operating unit, so I'm just going to use the wildcard. So this one here. So there's one already set up at site level. Just going to use the same at responsibility level. So you can use any operating unit here, because you have not created your own. You're going to do that when you go to subledger module. Save that. Let's go back to our slides. So we have done all the preparations that we need to do in order to be able to use this mass allocation feature. We have made sure that all the balances are set, and we have created a parent value which is going to help us in entering the mass allocation formula. Now all we need to do is to do the entry in Oracle. Okay, and that is what we are going to cover in our next lesson. But Bob, unless you have something to add, I think this is a good place to end our lesson today.
I think I'm good. Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.